For those who are watching online, I was explaining that I'll give a brief introduction to UCL before we get down to some more specific and useful information. So UCL was created in 1826, the third university created in England. The first two, I'm sure you can imagine, Oxford and Cambridge. But at this time, if you wanted to study at Oxford or Cambridge, so if you wanted to study at university in England, you had to be a man, you had to be a practicing member of the Church of England, and your options for studies were quite limited. Pretty much theology or classics, which included Greek and Latin and rhetoric and logic. UCL was created in response to, I suppose you would call, a gap in the market these days, because there was no university available for people who did not meet these conditions. And also there was no university in the capital city, in London, which was quite strange. So a group of people got together to create UCL as a university that was open to all. It was open to students of any nationality, any race, any religion, any ethnicity, and it was also the first university in England to accept women students on equal terms with male students. It was also a university that was pioneering in its approach to what you could study. So it wanted to offer new subjects to students. So it was the first university that had a department of economics, the first department of mechanical engineering, first department, as you can see, of English, German, chemistry. And this was very revolutionary at the time. It was unusual to study these subjects certainly in the UK. Of course, these days, most universities around the world offer these sorts of subjects. But at the time, it was really, excuse me, pioneering. This guy here, who's been given the Andy Warhol treatment, this is the philosopher Jeremy Bentham. If you study politics or philosophy or political philosophy, you probably know about Jeremy Bentham, who was alive at the end of the 18th century, the start of the 19th century, and wrote a lot about reform of the education system, equality of opportunity, reform of the penal system, so punishment and prisons. And it was his writing, his ideas, that influenced the founders of UCL. Also, interestingly, Jeremy Bentham was a very close friend and correspondent of Bolivar, and advised on the creation of the Constitution here. So they were in close correspondence, and not just what became the Colombian Constitution, but constitutions of other new independent nations at the end of the independence movement. Where are we today? The history is all fine, but we need to know about UCL in its current state, 2018, 2019 now, of course. But the easiest way for me to give an indication of UCL's quality is with reference to the world rankings. World rankings are not perfect. Most of them are flawed in some way, but they do give a general good guide to the relative qualities of an institution. UCL, we're very proud to say, is currently number 10 in the QS World Rankings. In most world rankings you find UCL appears in the top 20, but of course the QS World Rankings has the best methodology, which puts us at number 10. 29 Nobel laureates, this is Nobel Prize winners, have passed through UCL's doors since the start of the Nobel Prize in 1900, I think. Currently about 38,000 students. 50% approximately are studying at undergraduate level, 50% studying at graduate level, so masters or PhD. It's it's a very international student body. So about 41% of our students are from outside the United Kingdom, representing over 150 countries. We've got the largest number of international students of any university in the UK. From Colombia, we currently have about 57, 58 students. Most Colombian students at UCL are studying master's programs, but there are some who are studying on doctorates, PhDs, and one or two at undergraduate level, but most are master's students. And most of those students do come with support from COLFUTURO, so they have the benefit of their financial aid. At UCL, we like to say we teach students how to think and not what to think. And this is very, very important to us, that we like to encourage our students to think for themselves. So we want to give them the tools to allow them to formulate their own ideas, their own viewpoints, and as far as we're concerned, as long as students are able to make a strong case with reference to research and facts and evidence, if they can support coherently their ideas, then that for us is what makes a good student. We don't want students who are just going to repeat the views of their professors and academics. We don't want students who are just going to repeat facts. That's relatively easy to do. But what we want to encourage is independent thought, a critical approach to learning. And this ultimately is what makes for successful researchers as well, after you've finished an undergraduate degree and after you have finished a master's degree. On the subject of research, UCL is a research-led institution. So a huge amount of research takes place at the institution. We've got approximately 6,000 academics at UCL. And we're known as part of a group of universities in the UK called the Russell Group. And the Russell Group is a group of 24 universities which are known as being research-focused. UCL is very, very successful in attracting research funding. And it's as a result of attracting so much research funding that we are able to attract some of the very best academics and professors and researchers from around the world. The sources of that funding are various. Sometimes it can be local government, it can be national government, it can be the European Union, it could be private enterprise and organisations. It can also be the charity sector. They fund a lot of research at UCL, particularly in medical research, for example. And this ability to attract funding and secure research grants and attract some of the world's best researchers benefits our students, because it is the researchers and the academics that are also involved in the teaching of the students at UCL, and they are able to feed in to the content of the programs the latest research that they are involved in. I'll speak a bit more about the type of master's programs that we have at UCL, but to give you an indication, the master's programs are very, very focused, very niche, you might say. There are currently more than 550 different master's programs available at the institution. So it's a very specialised approach. This is an illustration of central London. The idea of this map is just to give you an indication of the location of UCL. This is all central London. And UCL is just located towards the top of the map, beneath where you can see the Eurostar. This is where that train leaves for mainland Europe. Just below UCL, it's not a good illustration, but this is the British Museum, 5 minutes to the south of UCL. And also just to the north of UCL is the British Library. the neighbourhood where we are located is called Bloomsbury, and this has a very, very high concentration of academic resources. It is full of other universities, research institutes, museums, libraries. So the resources that are available in the immediate vicinity are absolutely fantastic, and our students and staff are encouraged to take advantage of those. Also, you can't see here from this map very clearly, but UCL is surrounded by metro stations, so the transport links are very, very comprehensive. But in fact, most people will either take the metro or they'll take the bus, they will walk, because London is a good city to walk around, or they will cycle, which is the cheapest option and sometimes the quickest, but the transport system is very comprehensive. UCL is what is known as a multidisciplinary university, and an interdisciplinary university, in fact. What this means is that our approach, particularly to research, is one that embraces working between departments and between faculties. And it's probably this approach that is one of the reasons why UCL is so successful in the research applications that it makes for research grants, and why a lot of the research output is rated so highly by other institutions. It's because we've got expertise across a whole range of academic disciplines. These are the faculties at UCL, so there are 11 of them. Most of these are quite clear, quite self-explanatory. Brain science, this is the faculty that has neuroscience, neurology, ophthalmology, psychology, language sciences. The built environment covers things like architecture, urbanization, development, planning. Engineering sciences also includes things like management science and finance, as well as more normal engineering sciences. Laws is laws, education, life sciences, mathematical and physical sciences, medical sciences, population health sciences. This looks at things like global health, epidemiology. And in social and historical sciences, we have that old Department of Economics, which I spoke about at the start, but also the Institute of Archaeology. We have anthropology, history. So there's a real broad range of departments at UCL. We've got approximately 75 different departments. And what this means is, because we've got academics and researchers working in each of these departments, then when it comes to an interdisciplinary approach to our research, we have the ability to take that approach. And that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful. Students at UCL, as well as having a fantastic learning experience, are also able to take advantage of extracurricular activities, many of which are organised by the Students' Union. We have one of the largest students' unions in the country, and the students themselves run over 250 different clubs and societies. The students decide themselves how much to charge for 1 year's membership of the clubs and societies, and there's a massive selection, but if you're unable to find a society that caters for or deals with your own particular interest, they can help you to create a society, as long as you can find enough people with a similar interest to join. Volunteering is also a very important part of the students' extracurricular activities. London is UCL, I should say, is a public university. So it's there not just for the benefit of the staff and students, but also for the general public, both in the wider community, but also immediately in the area where UCL is located, and approximately 30% of our students are engaged in volunteering activities during their studies. As far as accommodation is concerned, universities in the UK usually have their own halls of residence, so their own residences, and international students are guaranteed an offer of a room in one of the halls of residence, as long as you make the application by the deadline. 75% approximately of the halls of residence are located within 10 to 20 minutes of the main UCL campus in central London. But you don't have to take this offer. Some students prefer to look for private accommodation with a group of other students in a private house. And sometimes they live a bit further out of the centre of London because, as you can imagine, central London, where UCL is located, can be quite expensive, but a little bit further out and it's more affordable. But to live further from the centre in London is not a problem because, like I said, the transport system is very, very comprehensive. So it's very quick to travel into the centre, to the university, and then back out. The traffic, thankfully, is no longer like it is in Bogota today. The university has a very good reputation with employers. In the most recent employer reputation score conducted by our friends at QS in 2018, UCL had a score of 99.5 out of 100, which goes to show the esteem in which employers hold the graduates from UCL. We have a very large careers service which is engaged in helping our students to find employment after their studies, but also not just to find that employment, but to help them with their CVs, to help them write applications, to practice interviews. And there is a dedicated team for international students to help them and also to help them find jobs back in their home countries. Of course, not everybody wants to work for an employer. Some people would like to create their own companies. So the innovation and enterprise team at UCL are engaged in helping students who have an idea for a business plan that business and get it launched ultimately. As far as the UCL alumni are concerned, a huge number, so over 250,000 around the world in 180 different countries. There's also a strong alumni network here in Colombia, particularly in Bogota. A group of ex-students from UCL who will meet up for social events or are in contact to keep in touch with each other and assist each other in their post-study life. The programs that are offered at graduate level can be divided into two categories. The first is the master's level programs, and the second are the doctorates, so PhDs. In the UK, a master's program is usually 1 year, and that's the case also at UCL. There are a few exceptions of 2-year programs, but the majority of our master's programs are 1 year. And the structure is usually approximately 9 months of classes, courses, workshops, exams, and then 3 months where you have no classes, but you focus on your research project. This is what we call a dissertation, and it's like a mini thesis. For the doctorate is between 3 to 4 years of research. All doctorate students will have at least one supervisor, so an academic or professor who is responsible for advising the student and helping them through the PhD. Students may work as part of a research group, possibly on an existing larger research project, or they may work entirely independently on their own and undertake their own research project. The entry requirements are as follows. So for a master's program, most of the programs ask for a minimum of 4 out of 5 in your undergraduate studies from your university here in Columbia. There are some master's programs that will accept a 3.5, but the majority, they ask for 4. For doctoral programs, usually we require students to have a master's qualification first, but in some cases it is possible to be accepted for a PhD even if you don't have a master's. This is generally where you are an exceptionally good student, for example a undergraduate score of 4.5 or higher, and with significant research experience. The key here is that the supervisor that you want to work with has the decision over whether to accept you as a PhD student or not. And if you are able to convince the supervisor and demonstrate that you know enough about your subject, that you have sufficient research experience to competently complete a PhD to a high standard, then you can be accepted. But this is something to be discussed with the supervisor. English language, the most common qualifications are IELTS and TOEFL, although we do accept a list of others, including the Cambridge certificates. Usually, standard level, which is IELTS 6.5 or TOEFL 92, we ask for this for programs in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Advanced level, which is the other end of the scale, 7.5 in IELTS or 109 in TOEFL. This is usually for programs like law, political science, history, where you are required to have very advanced knowledge and produce lots of written work. Most other programs can be found in the middle range, the good level of English, which is IELTS 7 or good TOEFL 100. So in terms of applications, I'll explain a little bit about how master's applications work and how the doctoral applications work. So for the master's, applications usually open in October, and the official deadline is the end of July. But beware that some programs have an early deadline, such as the MSc in economics or the LLM in law. Even though the deadline for most programs is the end of July, my recommendation is that you apply as early as possible. Ideally, in my view, by the middle of March, because the danger is that if you wait too long, the program might close because we have made enough offers. So as a general rule, the earlier you make an application, the more chance you have to be accepted. And this is what we call a rolling admissions process. Application is made entirely online, and for a master's application, it's not necessary to contact an academic or a professor. Of course, if you have a question about the program, then you can make contact, but as part of the application, it's not necessary. This is what we ask for. So, of course, a complete application form. But in addition to this, we want 2 references, or at least we want the names and addresses and emails of 2 people that can provide a reference for you. A minimum of 1 must be an academic or a professor who knows your work. The other can be another academic, or it can be an employer or a professional. Third is the personal statement, and often this is the most important part of your application, because we often use the personal statement to make a decision between applicants. And so it's important that the personal statement that you write is exactly the type of statement that we're looking for, and this can help you gain an offer of admission at the university. What we like in the personal statement is for you to tell us exactly why you are interested in applying for this particular program. So it's a good idea in preparation that you read about the program in detail, read about your options, read about what you are taught, how you learn, so that you can talk with some authority about what attracts you. But also we want you to tell us why you believe you are an ideal candidate for the program. And this you need to do by giving us examples from your past experiences, your past studies, which support the idea that you're a fantastic candidate for the program. My team can provide a document to assist with the personal statement. There is a personal statement guidance document, and if you get in touch with us, we can send you a copy of this. And this outlines exactly what we're looking for, but also there are some things that we're not looking for. So it's not the type of institution that you might write for a US type of personal statement, I should say, that you might write for a US institution. So we don't want a life story. We don't want you to write an essay. We don't want lots and lots of information about your sports achievements or your charity work. This is fine for some institutions, but usually for UCL, what we prefer to see is what I've told you: your interest in the program, why it appeals to you, and how you can demonstrate that you are a great match for the program. We also want copies of your transcripts from every year of university. These need to be translated into English with a stamp and signature of a professional translator. We don't need an apostilla, but it must be professionally translated. English language qualification, we've already seen these. It is possible to make an application before you have done your English language qualification, and it's possible to make the application before you've finished your undergraduate studies, so before you receive your diploma. In this case, if we like your application, we make a conditional offer, and the conditional offer says you have a place, this is guaranteed, but before you can start the program, you must send us the missing documentation, the final diploma certificate, the IELTS certificate, the TOEFL certificate. There's also an application fee for the master's programs of £75. The doctoral applications are different. So these are for the PhDs. And usually the first step is to think of a research proposal. So an idea for a project that you would like to undertake at UCL. And this, of course, must include clear objectives, methodology, theoretical framework, an idea of some of the existing literature in the area that you want to research. And when you have that, you need to identify a professor or academic at UCL who you would like to be your supervisor. And then you contact the academic, and in the email you need to introduce yourself, tell them who you are, what you're studying, where you are from, and that you are interested in a PhD. And you need to include a summary of your research proposal. This should be maximum 300, 500 words, not more. Because at this stage, in the first email, you just want to get the interest of the academic. it can be tempting to write a huge, long plan for your PhD proposal, but in the first email, it needs to be quite short, because often the academics don't have time to read through an enormous, long email. But if you can get their interest with your research proposal, then when they come back to you, then they can ask you for further details. Then they can ask you to elaborate. So often when you get a response from a supervisor, they might ask for some more information. So how do you propose doing this? How do you propose doing that? They might make some suggestions, maybe changes to the objectives, changes to the methodology, and it's a dialogue. So the idea is to discuss these ideas, discuss these changes with the academic, and ultimately come to an agreement, a project that you are happy to undertake, and a project that the academic is happy to supervise. And as long as they are happy with your qualifications and your experience, then they will encourage you to complete an application form. So it's important to note that the application form for the PhD very often is at the end of the process. Most of the process is informal. There are some exceptions. So there exists a type of PhD at UCL which is called a studentship, and a studentship is usually advertised as a post, and it's advertised for students to come and work on an existing project. Often studentships are paid. They will pay your tuition fees, and usually they pay some maintenance. But this is like responding to an advert, and you can find studentships advertised on the UCL website, or also on a website called findaphd.com. But these are like applying for a job. So it's not the same process of think of a proposal, find an academic, discuss with the academic, because this is a project which already exists. They are looking for very talented research students to come and work on the project, and you earn your PhD in this way. So that's one thing to look out for. Generally, studentships usually occur in the area of science, technology, engineering, biomedical science, that sort of area. But to go back to the other type of PhD, where you create your own proposal and identify an academic, the best way to identify an academic at UCL, in my opinion, is the UCL Iris website. This is a directory of all of the research that is being undertaken at UCL, and you have profiles of all of the academics and researchers, including where they studied, their qualifications, their undergraduate degree, their master's, their PhD. It includes information on their research interests. It includes information on all of the research groups at UCL that they are part of, and also information on their publications, and often links to their publications. So this is a very, very good resource to help you to identify an academic supervisor. Postgraduate tuition fees, these are fees in both pounds and Colombian pesos. These are yearly fees, so it's per year, and you need to remember that the master's programs are 1 year, the PhD programs are 3 years, sometimes 4 years. But the good news is that, as we were hearing earlier, UCL has a long-standing relationship with our colleagues here at COLFUTURO, who, as well as supporting some general scholarships, which I'll talk about, we're also partnering with them for some particular Semilleros de Talento scholarships. The general scholarships, if we take the ones at the bottom first, These are for students who are either studying a master's or it can be for a PhD. And if you are selected as part of the COLFUTURO process and you are successful in your application to University College London, then we will pay a 25% tuition fee discount for every year of your studies. 1 year if it's a master's, 3 years if it's a PhD. And there's no limits on the particular academic area or the department or the faculty, but there's also no limits on the number of scholarships available. For the Semilleros de Talento scholarships, and there's a spelling mistake, there is a limit on numbers. There are only 2 of these available, but these pay a full scholarship of 100% of the tuition fees. So these are very, very attractive, obviously. And again, it's necessary for you to be selected by COLFUTURO as part of the program. You will then have their nomination. It will be sent to us. We just check if everything looks okay in your profile. And if everything is okay, then we will pay the 100% of the tuition fees. So this is a very attractive program. There are a range of other funding opportunities that UCL offers in addition to these scholarships. These ones are not limited just for Colombian students, but for all international students. Some of these are small contributions, so maybe £5,000, like the Santander Master's Scholarship. The British Chevening Scholarships, which I'm sure you know, where we partner with the British Embassy. These are fantastic, full scholarships and maintenance as well. This QR code leads to the UCL Scholarships website, which is easy to find via Google, and there's a search engine which shows you all of the different scholarships available. But there are some for research called Overseas Research Scholarships. There are 40 of these available for students from outside the European Union, and these pay the difference between UK fees and overseas fees, which is considerable. There are many ways to connect with us. We're on most of the main social media channels, though if I were to recommend one, I would probably say the Instagram channel is fantastic, because this, along with the hashtag LoveUCL, is full of content that is uploaded by the students. So this gives a really nice impression of what UCL looks like, what the environment is like, what the students get up to during their daily lives. So this is one I would certainly recommend. In terms of contacting us directly, contact details here are for my colleague Danielle, who is the representative directly responsible for advising students from Colombia. So if you have any particular questions after this presentation, then Danielle will be happy to respond to those. But also, anyone who is interested in an application and would like to receive the personal statement guidance document, again, this can be provided by Danielle just by writing to her and requesting it. That's about exactly the amount of time I said I was going to speak for. Does anyone have any particular questions, either here in the room or online, Johanna, if you can help us with that?
Okay, so let's go first here. Please ask a question in the microphone so people can hear you online. Questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to ask you the...
Hi.
Hello.
I have one question. Do you ask for the IELTS UKVI?
Okay. So, no, it doesn't need to be the IELTS UKVI. The reason is UCL is a highly trusted sponsor by the UK government. And what this means is the UK government trusts us to make an assessment of your English language level. we accept the academic IELTS and we accept the UKVI IELTS. So as long as you meet the levels that we ask for your particular program, if we give you an unconditional offer, that is enough for the government and for your application for the visa, because, like I said, we're highly trusted as a sponsor, so we can make our assessment of your English level.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. Because it's something that people ask frequently. So I have one online. Julian is asking who can be considered as a professional translator.
That's a very good question.
In Colombia, there is something that is like an official list of translators. So maybe he wants to know if it can be someone who is not on that list, or it has to be someone who has been certificated to translate documents.
It can be a notary, yes. So it can be a notary. It can be someone from a law company or a legal firm. I would play safe and try, if at all possible, to have someone from the list. But it can be, a notary, a notario, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe this is also a question for COLFUTURO. I don't know if that tuition fee, if I get COLFUTURO funding is enough to pay the tuition fee of UCL, considering that I also have to live in London and eat.
Probably COLFUTURO won't be enough to cover all the costs, because COLFUTURO can sponsor you up to $50,000 American dollars per the complete whole the duration of the master's degree. So you are the one who decides how do you want to distribute the money. So you can say pay all the tuition, but maybe you will need to find other funding for living expenses. So it will depend on how you construct your budget. But let's do first the questions regarding to the university, and then we can talk a little bit about COLFUTURO. So I'm going to ask one more question that we have in the chat. Julian, he also wants to know which is the minimum and the maximum length of the personal statement.
Okay, that is a good question. For the minimum, I would say a minimum 1 page. For the maximum, I would say maximum 2 pages. The reason, if you write less than a page, it looks like you haven't really tried, okay, that you haven't put much effort in. If you write more than 2 pages, we're not going to have time to read all of this. So my recommendation is between 1 and 2 sides of A4 paper.
Questions? I have more questions.
Hi, I have already applied, and I understand that you have a time period for a response to candidates, which is about 6 weeks since the application is completed. Mm-hmm. And it's been 10 for me since the last 10. I have applied since the 4th of December. So can you tell me something about this?
Okay, yeah, so I'll do that in 2 parts. The first is it's usually 6 to 8 weeks after the application has been completed. And the completed application for us is after both of your referees have submitted the reference. So as long as your referees have submitted the reference in December, did you say?
Yeah, the 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we've obviously exceeded the target of 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. So if you let me know your application number and the specific program that you've applied for, I can follow that up for you subsequently. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Liliana, she wants to know, is it relevant to have work experience directly related with the program?
Is it relevant?
Relevant to have work experience related to the program that she's planning to do?
Yes, it's not a requirement. For most of our master's programs, we don't insist that you have work experience. There are 1 or 2 that ask for work experience, but most of them do not require it. However, if you have work experience that is related to the program, then this is something you absolutely must include in your personal statement. But you must also tell us not just where you worked and what the dates of your work experience were. You need to tell us how this work experience has benefited you and how it will benefit you during the master's program. So you need to tell us about what did you learn. Maybe you had experiences of a particularly new work environment. Maybe you learnt some new skills, some new software, made lots of new contacts, different responsibilities that you were given. You need to make sure that these relate to the program of study. So while work experience is often not necessary, it can actually help give you the advantage over other candidates.
What happens if, for example, I get a conditional offer and I don't reach the score I need in the English test? Is it possible for me to, for example, do some previous English course or something like that and then be admitted?
Yes, it is, yeah. So we have what's called pre-sessional English courses, and this means English courses that take place during the summer in advance, pre the start of the master's and undergraduate programs. It depends how much you need to improve, because we have some for 5 weeks, some for 8 weeks, some for 11, and some for 19 or 20. So it is a possibility, yes.
I have one more question related with the language, and Liliana says that I am studying an academic English course in London with excellent results. Can I use a reference from this course to apply to a master program?
It really depends what the master's program is. You need to think about really if the teachers on the English course in London are the best people to give an assessment of your academic ability. If you're applying for something very specialised at master's level, it may be that a previous professor or academic from your undergraduate degree might be better. Mm-hmm. However, the professors or the teachers on the English course that she's undertaking in London might be able to give a reference for how conscientious she is, how hard she studies, how often she comes to class, how she contributes in class, how she interacts with other students. So yes, to a point, that sort of reference could be good. It's just a question of whether she considers that would be better than anyone else that she's got available.
Questions? Okay, one more question here. Who can help me at the university for a specific questions about the application form?
It would be the admissions office at UCL, though it depends exactly what type of question. It might be that the team in student recruitment marketing, my team, mm-hmm. might be able to help if it's not a question, a technical question, for example, about the functioning of the form. So it really depends. If she wants to, I recommend if she first gets in contact with Danielle at the email address here, and then if Danielle can't help, she can at least raise the issue with the admissions team.
Okay. No? Otra. I understand that in order to apply to the Semillero de Talentos program, I must have at least a 3 months antiquity. May I apply to the COLFUTURO program and be able to start this year at UCL? So that question is for me. Yep. The answer is you have to be at least six months in the Semillero de Talentos program. So if you are only 3 months, you won't be able to compete for the full scholarship, the 2 full scholarships that we have in this agreement. So you can apply to COLFUTURO, but you won't have chances of getting the full scholarship because you don't have the time required for the Semillero de Talentos program. One more question. This is very specific. Is a master in cognitive neuroscience? Do you have a master in cognitive neuroscience?
Yes, I'm sure we do.
Okay, Liliana, you heard the question. Other question here. Who can I contact in order to know information about UCL scholarships? all the other scholarships that the university has. I've been sending emails without any reply from the UCL Science and Technology Department, who awards the £10,000 scholarship. So maybe she's talking a specific scholarship that is in that department.
Yeah, if it's a specific,
David.
if it's a very specific scholarship awarded perhaps by one department, and whoever sent this has not got a response from the department, again, I would recommend contacting Danielle, and Danielle can get in touch with the department and try and get a response for them, which is usually a good way to approach things.
I don't have more questions in chat. Do you have questions? Okay, so no more questions. I don't know
Okay,
if you
thank
want to
you very
find
much.
us. Thank you. Gracias a todos por participar. Los invitamos a la charla informativa del programa de crédito beca, que es mañana y el otro viernes, que son las últimas 2 charlas antes del cierre de la convocatoria. Les recuerdo que la convocatoria cierra el 28 de febrero y que no es necesario que tengan la admisión para poderse postular a COLFUTURO. Entonces, la invitación es a que escuchen estas charlas informativas para que sepan exactamente cómo funciona el programa. Gracias a todos y feliz noche.